to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is dedicated to the education and empowerment for all people struggling with substance use. You know, it's coming into March. This is my month to, unfortunately, really acknowledge the death of my son. Not that I don't acknowledge that every single day. And no family should walk alone, and no one should struggle and suffer with this insidious disease without help, no matter what the circumstances are. So right now we have a really hot topic in Suffolk County, and last night was the hearings for the legalization of marijuana. And my dear friend Tom Silmy is here, and he is one of the great guys in government.
Thank you, Linda.
Always, because you're just a great guy.
Thanks.
So government aside, it doesn't really, you just do the right thing. And we'll talk a little bit about marijuana, because
Sure.
I think the train has left the station anyway.
That may well be.
Yeah.
The state has started down this path, and it doesn't look like they're going to veer off.
Yeah.
They see there's certainly a widespread movement, if you will,
Yes.
to legalize, and it started with the legalization of medical marijuana, which I thought was a good idea.
I agree with you. I don't think if that helps somebody struggling with a chronic illness or certainly end-stage cancer or whatever it is, by all means.
But those of us who know how government works just foresaw this coming. It was an inevitability, and now it's just a matter of how it gets done, I think. I don't think there's any way to stop it, although the governor, as he does sometimes, sort of punted on the whole thing when he says, well, I'm going to pass the law, I'm going to sign the law to allow for the legal recreational use of marijuana, but we'll give counties and cities an opportunity to opt out. So hooray, for me, with all the folks who support legalization, that I legalized it in New York State. But for those who don't want it legalized, you have your opportunity as well to stand up against it. And we'll see what the counties do.
But you know what? The thing is that the opting out does not make it illegal in Suffolk County.
Right.
So you can go to another county and purchase it.
Very true.
All the laws remain the same. And then the ironic part of it is Suffolk County doesn't get to participate in any of the funds that they could have earned. So, and it should never be about money.
Yeah, frankly,
it should never be about money.
Frankly, Linda, I don't want those funds. It's you've seen the devastation. And we've said it over and over again. Not everybody who drinks, smokes weed, and graduates to something more serious. Not everyone who smokes weed, gets involved with heroin or cocaine or anything more serious. But the potential is there, and the potential for other far-reaching consequences. We talked before we started today about drunk driving and driving while high, the motor vehicle accidents that will inevitably occur because people are driving high.
That scares me more than anything. Tom.
Yeah, I mean the cost associated with legalization,
yes.
The cost to society far outweighs, in my view, the financial benefits.
Listen, if you're home in your house and you are an adult and you're doing all the right things, what you do in your own home, do in your own home. It's none of my business what you do in your own home. I won't criticize you. I won't judge you. But the message that we send to our children is a very loud message now, right?
Right.
Because they're already speaking it back to you. Well, it's legal, so I can do it. Alcohol's legal, so I can do it. And parents who are uneducated on really the science behind prevention and the effects of these mood-altering drugs on a developing brain, if you knew all that, you would never allow your kid to participate.
Right.
So, again, we go back to even something as silly as immunizations, right? They may cause autism. They may do this. How many people opted out and now we have a measles outbreak? But parents will pull the plug there, but they won't pull the. So what? How does that work? You know, it's just the stupidity.
Right.
The stupidity, the naivety, if that's the way you're supposed to say that,
Naivete.
right? Naivete.
Right.
All of those things.
Right.
To be forearmed, right, is to be forewarned.
Right.
So gather all your information before you allow your kids to do that.
Absolutely. And, you know, to a certain extent, what you say is correct when you say, you know, folks can do whatever they want to do in their own
Absolutely.
homes. But, you know, I've talked to so many people who are afraid that they're going to be walking down Main Street on their way to or from a restaurant or a movie theater or whatever, perhaps shopping with their kids in the local, you know, gift shop, and they're smelling pot.
It's already happening, though, Tom.
I know.
When you drive on the LIE, you have your windows open, your vents
know.
open. It's already happening. In Manhattan, if I just stood on a corner, I could get high.
Right.
The amount that happens, the concentration, it's really quite unbelievable. And quite honestly, that's infringing on my civil liberties.
Right.
I don't choose to inhale cigarette smoke, and I certainly don't choose to inhale marijuana smoke. So where are my civil liberties being protected? Because they're not. But what I am scared of is a young family of 5, like my daughter and her family, driving to my house for Sunday dinner and being hit. And then, of course, they didn't know that they were driving high.
Right.
Come on. You know what? I'm not going to buy that either.
Right. Right.
So that's what I'm always afraid of. The collateral damage.
And it's a real fear.
And it's a real fear.
I mean, we see how many deaths there are on the roads as a result of drunk driving.
How about all the cars that just accidentally plow into buildings or sides of houses?
Right.
Gee, was alcohol or substance use involved there? Give me a break.
Right. And because heretofore smoking weed is illegal, you have a smaller population doing it than will naturally occur if you legalize it. So you're going to make the roads much more dangerous.
Yes. Plus the fact, we're not equipped. Our police department is not equipped. I've seen the state troopers that are trained to read eye movements. They're trained to read all the involuntary movements that you cannot possibly get away from. That training is extremely expensive.
Right.
We can't afford to do that with every police officer. So how are we going to prove driving while high, right? How do we prove it? How do we police it? And how do we keep our roads safe?
So I don't know the answer to that question, Linda, but I guarantee you those that are supporting this have those answers. Whether or not they're realistic answers is a whole other story, but I guarantee you they'll have an answer to that question. And that sort of brings us to this question of, well, what exactly is this going to look like? We still don't really know.
Right.
How is the governor going to put it forward, or the state legislature? Is it going to be in the budget, where they kind of tend to squeeze a lot of controversial things sometimes? How will the legislature amend that if it's in the budget? What opportunities will there be for localities to opt in or opt out? What about internet sales? What about how many retail locations, how many wholesale locations are there going to be?
Where's the locality?
Where exactly are they going to be?
The vape shops, any kind of those shops should not be anywhere near schools, right?
Right.
I mean, we have to really be so diligent about what our main street looks like.
Right. Hopefully, the state legislature and the governor have learned some things from issues past, and hopefully they don't rush into making poor decisions.
You know, listen, it's going to happen. I know that. I'm realistic with that. How does that roll out? Just take your time. Does it have to be this year? We're not ready for it. Is the infrastructure built in for prevention, for getting schools, you know, more? We can't even get prevention for all the other substances into schools on an everyday basis. And I'm not talking about your one-time check. We did the, you know, the presentation to the entire student body for 45 minutes, and that's all we have to do for prevention. You know, up in Syracuse, New York, they have a new program, and it's called PAC. And they put it into schools that had disciplinary problems. So they went, and I don't know the numbers, but I will give you an idea of, it went from having, so this starts in kindergarten, and it's mindfulness, and it's how to communicate, how to talk about your feelings, how to be nice to one another. So we're just talking about raising good humans, right? They went from 30 disciplinary problems in K through 2 down to 0. So we're talking about, why aren't we doing that in every single school district in New York?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I know, dear friends with somebody who is kind of on the cutting edge of this mindfulness movement. She was a social worker at Islip Schools. Her name is Corinne Winter. And now
I'm going to get her contact information.
She's wonderful. She runs a great organization now, and they teach mindfulness.
Yes.
But you know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you know who taught mindfulness? Our parents.
Yes.
You didn't need schools to teach mindfulness because kids were respectful in school. I mean, certainly you had outliers, but for the most part, kids were respectful in schools. And unfortunately now, we've seen that more and more students have a lack of respect for their elders, whether they be teachers, administrators,
parents,
other parents, their own parents.
Yeah.
And so, once again, we are relying on schools to teach things that really ought to be taught in the home, but for whatever reason aren't being taught in the home.
But you know what? Sometimes the greatest lesson comes from the best teacher. So when a 6-year-old comes home and says, that's how we got the smoking.
Right.
Because when kids started to learn don't smoke, they went home and they changed their parents.
Yep.
And that took 20 years.
Right.
But we do have a group of parents that are very, and I'll give them, it's very difficult to make a living on Long Island and to keep up. But there's a big difference in having what you need and having what you want. So if you wanted children, I have a plaque at home. When you have a child, your heart walks outside your body. So pay attention to your heart that's walking,
Right.
Unfortunately, this generation, when 40 became the new 20, that doesn't mean you get to, have all-girl weekends and go out and drink right?
Right.
And all-boy weekends and not, you have a family.
Yeah.
So I'm not judging or criticizing anyone.
Right.
But when you don't pay attention to what needs to be paid attention to, things happen. And even when you're paying attention, things happen.
Right.
So it just happens, period. Right. But if you can have the best defense and the best offense going, we're going to have better outcomes.
Right.
And, our goal is just to raise good young adults, right?
Right.
Our goal isn't to raise professional athletes who are going to go and get a scholarship and then make millions, because that's 1 in a million, or as I always love to say when I coach girls lacrosse, your chances are slim to none. And Slim went out to lunch 15 minutes ago, so don't count on that.
Right.
They don't need to have 103 average, because while you're putting all this stress on a young adult and then tell them Why are you not happy? This is the best time of your life. Their adolescent brain says, holy crap, this is the best time of my life? Screw it.
Yeah.
If this is the best, I don't want to make it.
Right.
And that needs to be paid attention to. Mm-hmm. Because they don't think with your brain. They think with a 12, 13, 14-year-old brain, right?
Right. Yeah, so the mindfulness movement, I think, is an outgrowth of, as I said, for whatever reason, parents are unable to teach the things to kids that are mindful things.
Yes.
So now you have a kid that's captive, basically, in school for several hours a day. Why not bring that component? And honestly, my kids both went to Catholic school. And one of the reasons that my wife and I made the sacrifice, huge financial sacrifice,
Yes,
obviously,
absolutely,
to have our kids in Catholic school, was that they got more out of it than just the academics. And I think the public education system is realizing that you need to have students with healthy minds, and who are in a healthy social environment, to really create an environment that's productive from an academic learning point of view. And so, if children are coming in, without that foundation, or with an impaired foundation,
yes,
we educators need to help shore up that foundation, or build that foundation in some cases, so that the kids are prepared to learn. But it's a balance, right? Because you have to teach the academics.
yes. And they're under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's under a lot of pressure. But it used to be, it really does take a community to raise a child.
It does.
And it used to be, certainly, I say this all the time, if I was where I wasn't supposed to be, by the time I rode my bike home, my mother was already standing out front with probably a wooden spoon,
right,
saying, get in the house, what were you doing over there? There were consequences, but everyone cared about me enough in the community to say, hey, I saw Linda over here, and I know she's not allowed over here. Mm-hmm. My mother didn't say, don't you tell me thank you, right?
Right.
No one's against your child. Mm-hmm. And I think as adults, we have to be willing to hear what we need to hear.
Right. So in the context of our conversation about marijuana, if in fact it's inevitable that it becomes legalized for recreational use, the idea of mindfulness, I guess, is if we can create, if we can somehow ensure that our students are strong,
yes,
mentally, they're comfortable with themselves, that they love themselves, they're able to love others, and they don't feel these stressors, from
peers.
Their peers.
Right. That's a huge thing.
Then perhaps they're more prepared to be able to say no. I don't need to alter my mind with
Correct.
marijuana or whatever. And
not be bullied.
And not be bullied.
By social media.
Right.
By other factors that are out of their control.
Right.
Because when we see the suicide rate go up in 10-year-olds, right, we have a problem.
Huge problem.
We have a problem in society.
I've heard some of the numbers from local school districts in terms of middle school kids that are,
it breaks my heart,
trying to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And it's jaw-dropping.
It's mind-boggling. Because no one should feel like that. You know what? Childhood is meant to be carefree, that you feel secure, that you're loved, that you have all the basic necessities, and they don't need a lot. They just need to feel safe. Really, any child, that's all they need to know.
Right.
Is when I put my head down at night, I'm in a house where I'm loved, I am safe, I am warm, period.
Right.
We're missing something. We're missing a big, when you can't escape what's being said to you or about you, and it stays forever, it's a big burden. As an adult, we can handle that. We can let things roll off our backs, right? But a child can't.
Right.
We need to protect them from all of that. So
That could take us into a whole other conversation about gangs and
oh my gosh! And so you're in the 10th district, right?
Right.
So you encompass Islip.
yeah, some of the wealthy areas
Yes.
in the town of Islip, and some very areas that with big challenges. I represent a tiny little bit of Brentwood, a fairly substantial portion of Central Islip,
And gangs.
and gangs are a problem, and we sort of see that the main reason that kids get there, it's really a couple of reasons kids get involved in gangs. They're either sort of forced to join the gang.
Correct.
They're threatened, whatever. But then there are those kids who are looking for that
Family.
love, that family, that security that you talked about a couple of minutes ago, and they find that in the gangs,
Yes, they do.
setting.
And it's a very dysfunctional
Sure.
family,
Right.
but they're going to find their people, as they
Right.
say.
Right.
Kids find their people. Suicidal kids find other kids that are struggling with the same mental problems that they have.
Right.
Kids that are using mind-altering substances and drinking find other kids that have their same mindset.
Right.
It's just the natural order of life, right? But that's a huge problem. And the gangs certainly know who to go after. Just almost similar to a pedophile will know which kid is more vulnerable.
Right.
I always knew that any of my kids, they would have brought them back because they never would have gone, and they would, because they were strong in that way,
Right.
that they wouldn't have fallen prey to
Right.
by the grace of God.
Right.
But our kids, really, that's sad. And in Central Islip, you do have two mom and dad working, and we have immigration issues, and we have a language barrier, and we can have a lot of things happening.
Right.
So we need to strengthen that with more community programs.
Right. Interestingly, in Central Islip, as an example, the family values, though, are very strong.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a lack of values.
No.
Oftentimes it's other issues, like people are just trying to make a living, and so
Trying to survive.
They're trying to survive.
Yeah.
It's not even making a living.
It's not even making a living.
It's putting food on the table, turning the heat on.
Yes.
We have our work cut out for us.
We do. No, and it's interesting, and I remember a few years ago when D.A. Cini was police commissioner, and he had a program where they would really target 10-year-olds or that they could see were going down the wrong path, and they would go to the home and they would talk to if there was a grandmother there. And he said, if there was a grandmother there, it was a home run. It's a home run, because things were going to change for that child.
Right.
Because grandma wasn't going to allow it.
Grandma's not messing around.
Grandma's not messing around.
Grandma never messed around.
Right. And that's empowering the family.
Right.
I know that our friend Kim Laube always shows that one little picture of the three Nonas on the fire escape.
Right.
In their house coats, watching. And if you got yelled at by anyone, you didn't give them the finger and ride off, because they would come after you.
Right.
But there was someone just saying, hey, I care enough about you to yell at you, and you need to hear that.
Right. And you just sort of touched on, I'm not sure that we've talked about this before, but the breakup of the family.
Yes.
It has so many far-reaching impacts.
Absolutely.
And to be able to reunite the family.
Yes.
would have so many positive impacts. So, you know, when I grew up, my mom was a single parent. She had to work a lot for my brother and I, you know, to live. And at some point, my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother came to live with us. And so when my mom went to work, my grandmother was there for when we got off the bus and we came home, she was there. So there was constant supervision. But because of the economics in our area, especially on Long Island, more and more, you know, folks who are at that age where they're starting to have grandchildren are deciding that it's too expensive to live here.
Yeah.
And they're leaving.
Yes.
So now you have, you know, mom and dad, hopefully
Yes.
mom and dad, not,
Hopefully.
as we know, not always mom and dad,
Right.
but
It's 50,
mom and dad
probably
left here.
50 chance.
So now what happens? The kid goes into daycare.
Yeah. Or
if
is
they
a
can
latch,
afford it, or-
right, or a latchkey kid.
Right. Or there's, you know, a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old kid who's now caring for a 10 or 9-year-old kid.
Yes.
And, you know, so I've always said that we ought to find ways to make it more economically viable.
Yes.
To keep families together. So I had this crazy idea, if I were ever to become a supervisor of a town or something like that, if I had the ability to do so, I would explore the idea of actually reducing somebody's taxes to have an accessory apartment where a family member lives.
Wow. That
Now
would
you
be
make it more
godsend.
affordable for the family member to live here on Long Island, where it's
Yes.
otherwise unaffordable.
Yes.
But you also, you know,
You just strengthen the
you
family.
just strengthen the family.
Right.
You gave it an economic incentive to having that family stay together.
Yes.
And from a societal point of view, that would be so beneficial. And you know what? There's the trickle-down effect in terms of the economic benefits of keeping that family together are tremendous. Now you have people living here, they're spending their tax dollars here.
Yes.
Maybe they're receiving a pension, and rather than taking that pension to Florida or South Carolina or Tennessee,
Absolutely.
they're spending that money here. So to me, the benefits of doing something like that would be tremendous.
And Long Island is a phenomenal place to live.
It really is.
Proximity to New York City. I love living here. I grew up here. You know, when you drive out east, it's really some of the prettiest country, right? But the reality is, can you afford to stay here?
Right.
And we shouldn't have to make that choice all the time.
We shouldn't.
And we should, we're going to be right back. We'll be right back after this message. We have a lot to talk about. Love that idea of
One, two, three. Long before my dream of playing professional football became real, addiction impacted my family and nearly destroyed it. As a New Yorker, I can tell you that all our communities are being hurt by addiction. New York State is leading the fight in combating addiction, providing help and treatment regardless of your ability to pay. For more information, visit combataddiction.ny.gov. Growing up as a young kid when addiction was around was tough. You know, it was, at the time, I felt like it was unfair. I had to grow up quick. At the age of 11, my father left the house after, a couple months after I found drug paraphernalia in their nightstand. And it was a tough reality to face as a young kid. And, there were good days and bad days, but there were a lot of bad ones. After my father left, we got kicked out of homes. There were people in and out of my house, and I didn't understand, why did this happen to me? Why did addiction why do my parents have to be addicted to drugs? Yeah, going through recovery it was a long road. You know, when I was a senior in high school, my mother went away to prison. You know, I had to go through my college recruiting by myself. I had to go off to college. You know, my friends' parents took me to college. And so it was tough going through those times. But when my mom decided that she wanted to change her life, she wanted to get help. You know, my mom got sober in prison. She got out of prison and gave up drugs and regained her relationship with God. My mother works for the church now, and we have a great relationship. I tell her every time I talk to her how proud I am of her and what she's accomplished. You know, she's a tough woman. She's been through a lot, but the things that she's done after prison have been amazing. You know, I'm so proud of her. She got her associate's degree. We have a great relationship. She's a great grandmother to my nieces and nephews, to my children. She's always there for me when I need to talk to her, and we have a great relationship. For a while, it looked like, you know, when you're in it, when you were in the addiction part of it, I never thought my mom would be the same. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can change your life, you can get help, and you can have a better life and regain those relationships and have a positive effect on those people around you. You know, I look at, you know, when I go through tough times in my life, I ask myself, what would my mom do? Because my mom has been through, you know, I always say my mom has been to hell and back, and she's doing great, and I'm thankful for it, and I'm proud of her. My father as well. You know, I didn't have the best relationship with my father. When he left the house when I was 11, he left us with no car. I didn't speak to him for 3 years, and that was probably the toughest time of my life. But we gained that relationship back. My father's been clean for 3 years. His health is doing better. He's trying to be a better grandfather, trying to be a better father. And, you know, I forgive him. And our relationship is, you know, we're back communicating, and I love it, you know. I tell him I'm proud of him as well, because it's a tough circumstance. You know, it's easy to look at someone who's in addiction and blame them, and blame them for the choices they make. But it's the drugs, it's the alcohol that have a hold of them. And it's not, they don't want to be in that position. You have to understand that. They don't want to be making these decisions. They don't want to put these people in jeopardy. They want to get help. But once they decide to get help and to do something about it, there's great things that can happen at the end. Yeah, recovery is possible, and it happens to a lot of people. You know, you'd be surprised at how many people are in recovery right now that went out and got help. People out there that want to help you if you're in recovery. You know, there are people all over who you have no idea went through, they've been affected by it. You know, whether it's a family member, a friend, themselves personally, if they went through addiction. There are a lot of people that are going through issues that you've been through. So don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of resources out there that can help you and get you the right treatment and to get you back on the road to recovery.
Welcome back to Resolutions for Recovery. Having so much fun with Tom here, even off camera. So, you know, Tom, I know you're going to run for your last term this year. Yep. And what we're talking about is, let's do something together. Thomas's Hope and Town of Islip, let's just create the community that we would love to see. Because let's be the example. Right. Right? Talk is cheap. We'll just make it happen.
We will figure something out.
We will figure something out. You know, when you pull people together and they can collaborate instead of isolate and say, I wish I got that money, I wish I had that. You know, stop. We should all be walking the same path.
Right.
there's certainly plenty of people to help.
Well, you know, one of the most rewarding parts of my job is to be able to boost up, support, you know, talk about as much as I can organizations that do great work in our communities, and there are so many of them. There
And
really are.
I love when you're with the Boy Scouts, and I love when you're reading a story to the elementary
Right.
school. I love that you're out in your community, really.
Right.
You know, and all politicians do that. No, you know, no
Right.
ill will here.
Right.
But there's doing that for a photo op, and then it's doing that because I know that you love it.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it.
And there's nothing like being with a group of 6-year-olds to boost your day.
It's true.
It really is.
That's my best day.
That's your best day.
My best day starts out with a bunch of students talking about whatever and having a good time.
And having a good time.
Seeing the smiles, you know, and
Because they're so, you know, children are so resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can build them stronger and healthier
right.
at 6 years old, that at 12 years old, that they're comfortable in their skin.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't feel the need to escape.
Right.
Right?
So, yeah. Best day starts with in a classroom with some kids at 7:15. You know, either reading a book or for high school kids, you know, moderating a debate on some issue of the day, talking about substance abuse. And then my best day ends at a Kiwanis Club meeting or, you know,
Or playing music.
a Chamber of Commerce meeting or sometimes playing music. But, you know, being involved with a group that just does great work in our communities. They
It doesn't have
raise
to be.
money.
It doesn't have to be huge.
Doesn't have to be huge.
It's just
but
really something in your community.
And there's enough people, and there are enough of these organizations that keep the fabric of our communities
Yes.
really, really strong. And so to be involved with those types of groups, we see,
I have a
you and I both
question
see
for
so
you.
many
Yeah.
negative things, right?
I don't want to. You know what? I don't even focus on negative
Right.
anymore. I just don't, because you know what? I don't even like watching the news,
Right. Yeah.
local or national. It's just, what can I do today?
Right.
What's my job today? My job is just to help one person.
Right.
And if I do that, I've had a really good day, because there's a lot of bad stuff in the world.
Yep.
So just be, you know, it's much easier to be kind and smile than it is to be mad and be mean.
Right.
It takes work to be mad and be mean.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the kids in Lindenhurst who I had on the show, they're doing
Right.
great work. And when you work with high school students, not all of them are smart asses.
Right.
You know, and even the smart asses are suffering. That's why they're smart asses, right? They're carrying something. But they all know that drugs and alcohol are bad. But they can't always stand up and say, I'd like to be with a friend that doesn't do that.
Right.
Because they're afraid, right? So we need to listen to our youth. They're very bright. They know what they need. They know what they want. And when I work with high school students, they go, so tell me what your ideas are. And if I don't answer them correctly, or what they think, because I'm open to, listen, we would all love teenagers to be abstinent from drug and alcohol for as long as possible. Is that reality? Probably not. That's probably a big not, right?
Right.
But when somebody does start to go down the wrong path, that there are enough kids around them that can support them to get them back to where they need to be.
Well, and so that's interesting, really interesting that you pointed that out, because as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you know, I spend a lot of time in the schools, and one of the outgrowths of all of the, you know, the bullying and the drug abuse and stuff like that, one of the outgrowths has been a growing population of students who are, no, that's not going to be me. And you know what? It's not going to be my friend either. And so you see students actually banding together to get involved in positive
Role
reinforcement,
modeling,
to be
right.
role models, doing things that are so extraordinary and inspiring their peers to not be, the bully.
Yes.
And it's so great to see our kids taking on that sort of leadership role in our schools. And it's happening. I see it every day.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So, you said that our kids are bright and their kids are on the ball. They really are. Our kids recognize this problem, whether it be bullying or, smoking weed or whatever the problem is, and they are doing something about it themselves. And
they're the solution. They're standing in the solution and not bitching about the problem.
And it's that's the best kind of
solution.
Yeah, that's the best kind of answer to problems like that.
Peer-driven is the answer.
Yeah.
Doing the recovery coaching, and I'm a trainer for recovery coaches now. So seeing the magic happen when you just are there as a peer, whether it be with a family member or with somebody struggling, and just being an ear.
Right.
And saying, you know what, I got you. Let's turn and face the problem together, and let's see where we can go. Instead of saying, you should, people don't like to be should on.
Right.
They like to be heard.
Right.
They have feelings, they have thoughts, they have their own answers. And sometimes you just have to go along long enough to give them what they think they want.
Right.
Until they figure out what they really need. That lifeline.
Right.
In any problem that you may have in life, it's that lifeline. We don't get it through isolation and texting.
Right.
We get it by talking and sitting and putting your arm around somebody and saying, why don't you just come home with me and we'll have some dinner? Or let's have a cup of coffee.
Right. So one of the things that schools do, which is fantastic, is they embrace artistic talent, and this is something that's really uplifting.
First thing that we cut,
and that's the first thing that's oftentimes cut.
Yes.
But right now we're right around the time of year where schools are putting on their school musicals and whatnot. You want to be uplifted? You go see, Pippin or Grease at Islip schools or whatever. All of the schools have these put on these productions, and it's amazing to see how talented kids are. And I could sit there and it's like, forget about Broadway. I don't need to go to Broadway.
No, you don't.
I just sit in the school auditorium.
First off, you can't afford to go to Broadway.
Well, that's a whole other story.
That's a whole nother issue.
Right. So you pay $8 for a ticket to go to Hauppauge High School and see a musical.
And see a phenomenal musical.
Some of the talent that these kids have is unbelievable. And so the more things like that schools can provide for students to get involved with, so they're not kind of finishing their school day, going home, and idle hands, or what's the saying?
Devil's
playground or something like that.
Something like that. We are not good.
You give them something. You give them something to do.
Yes.
And
it's so parents always feel like, well, my child plays sports, so I'm all good. That's typically where they're going to have their first drink or drug.
Right.
And nothing is guaranteed. Let's face it.
Right.
But kids need an outlet to get rid of all of that. Right. And, unfortunately, in our school districts, I'm sure you're the same as me. We had gym 3 times a week, and we had recess.
Right.
We went outside.
Right.
We freaking got fresh air and sunshine.
Do kids not do that anymore?
Not so much. Not like they used to. But
Right.
now, in high school, if you have gym, you'll have gym once a week. Then maybe the next week you get it twice a week. That's not healthy.
Right.
And art and music are electives. So, kids need to have fun. They need to follow their passion, whatever their passion is at that moment in time.
Right.
And kids in elementary school, they need to go and burn off things. Kids don't all have ADD, ADHD. They need to run.
Right.
A 6-year-old that can't sit still doesn't have a mental defect. They're a 6-year-old.
Right.
Hello.
Right.
They're meant to run. They're meant not to have attention for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Give them things to do.
Give them
Just
things to
give
do
'em-
and just let them.
And our schools have really our schools have really stepped up locally.
Yes. That's good to hear.
The school, from what I see, the schools are supporting extracurricular activities. I mentioned Kiwanis Club. There's something called Key
budgetary.
Club.
Yes.
Which is the sort of the school version of Kiwanis. I'm also a member of Rotary Club, and for Rotary there's Interact, which is the school
kids,
version of
right.
Rotary, and there's Junior Chambers of Commerce, and so there's all of that plus the athletics, plus the arts, plus other advanced academic things that kids can get involved in, like Model UN, for example.
Yes.
Like Moot Court, like it just goes on and on and on. All of the AP classes, there's all kinds of things that
There's
that
all
students
kind
can
of
do.
really positive things that
Yeah.
are going on.
Yep.
And we should focus on that. And, really fortunately in the town of Islip there, you have the theater right there.
CM Performing
Yeah.
Arts. Yeah, it's a wonderful place.
It's a wonderful place. I've seen, productions
Go see
there.
Mamma Mia.
Okay.
Mamma Mia is playing right now. It's at CM Performing Arts. Great show. Great show. Go see it.
Okay.
Right in Oakdale.
And perfect,
It's a
right?
few bucks.
Few bucks.
You go see Mamma Mia at CM Performing Arts. I think Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is the next show that comes up, but they're right in Oakdale.
And then you can
go
have
to dinner
some,
afterwards.
Oh my gosh, great dinner. in
Bring the
Oakdale.
kids.
Yes.
Yep.
This is a family. You can't afford to take a family of 5 to Broadway.
Right.
Taking you and a date to Broadway is in and of itself expensive. So these are really things that we can capture on Long Island and make the most of all our local.
Yep.
Smithtown has the Smithtown Theater there that does live shows. Every community, Northport, the Engelman Theater,
Right.
you can see some really great shows. With a lot of local talent.
And kids, too.
And kids.
Yeah.
And kids, bring it back.
Yep.
Port Jaff Theater. I took my grandson to see Scrooge there. It was awesome.
Right.
He was amazed. Sat in the first row for all of, $40 for tickets. It was a great day for us.
Yep.
So, yeah, we really need to promote what's right on Long Island. I know that your superintendent, if she's still there, Susan Schnabel,
No, she retired.
she retired.
Sue retired. We have a great new superintendent in Islip, Ellen Semmel.
Okay.
She's doing a great job, and
Sue
we're
was
losing
awesome.
our principal. We're losing our Islip High School principal. He's taking a job somewhere else at the end of this school year.
Okay.
But you know what? In the schools that I represent, and I can only speak for the ones that I represent, we're blessed to have some really good leadership, both from on the administrative side. Faculty is all good. The school boards are very supportive. So I represent parts of Connecticut School District, Bayshore School District, East Islip, Islip School District, Hauppauge School District, Central Islip and Brentwood School Districts.
Okay.
And all of them have leadership, whether it's on the school board or the administration, that are very, very supportive.
I have a project that we're going to do. I just thought of it. I have the whole thing rolling in my head right now.
Awesome.
We're going to talk, so it'll be a secret
All right,
for
I
now.
can't wait.
So it's going to be very
can't wait to hear it.
exciting to see what happens on what we're going to do.
Okay.
Because it's going to be amazing. Because it's already amazing in my head. So
Well, if it's your idea, Linda, I'm sure it's going to be great.
it's going to be great. And we're going to, we're just looking to change the landscape a little bit.
Right.
It's what we have to do. Just change the landscape a little bit.
Right.
We got to flip back to simpler times. I think that's a great way to put a lot of things. We got to flip back to some simpler
That's a big
times.
flip.
I know
That's
it
a
is.
big flip. I don't know if we're
there's
gonna
a
get back.
way to embrace technology, but we have to. Everything is a balance. And I think that's the biggest word that I've learned this year is about balance for me too, because, you know, I started Thomas's Hope, and I have such a passion for what I do, and I will continue to do that.
Right.
But there's also Linda's time as, you know, just as a woman, as a mother, as a Mima now, and everything else has to shut down for me to have that balance.
Right.
You know, and I think that for every person living, we need to learn balance.
That's
it's
exactly
my
right.
word of 2019.
So when you walked in the studio before we started the show, I was sitting there playing a little bit of guitar,
Yes.
right? That's my balance. My balance is to play and sing music.
And that, what a great
It's always
outlet.
been my balance since I was a kid. And you know,
It's such an escape.
put it down for a while, you pick it up for a while, you put it down but now I so enjoy doing it. Yeah. And,
Just takes you to your own place.
and you need
And it's
that.
quiet. It's you know, so unfortunately my arm is still screwed up, but I practice yoga and I love to work out and I love to do all of those things too. Because especially yoga, it's just mind moving meditation where for an hour or 90 minutes that I am quiet in my own space and I'm allowed to think nothing, or I'm allowed to focus on, you know, and it brings me such peace.
Yeah.
So now I can only really sit in meditation, which sometimes, you know, and it's not easy to sit quiet in
Right.
meditation, but I do it, and it's it's a learned thing to sit quiet. But just, you know, your music is your moving meditation,
Right.
because I'm sure your mind is not really thinking about anything.
No. When I'm playing, that's all I'm thinking about. I'm
And
just having
isn't that
a
a
good time.
beautiful thing?
It's and it may not be smiling outwardly while I'm playing,
But
but
it's-
I'm smiling inwardly. You know, you tend
And
to
your brain gets
you tend
flooded?
to express the emotion that you know,
Yes.
whatever song you're playing, you tend to express that emotion, whether it's anger or sadness or happiness or whatever. But it's always happiness inside.
But your body gets, you know, for all of these things, the dopamine rush that we get from doing the things that we love is equivalent to using something that's going to cause you harm in the end.
Yeah.
And these are the techniques that we have to teach kids.
Right.
That's like a big lesson.
Yep.
And if we could teach kids how to meditate or just be quiet and mindful,
Right. Or find something that gives them
that gives them
the
that.
natural high.
Yes.
That the body, you know, craves.
Yes.
We all crave to be happy and, you know, and so whatever it is, it doesn't have to be something that you're putting inside your body.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Whatever
And this should
turns
be
you
the-
on, just
This
find
should be our
something.
message. So at Thomas's Hope, we have inside job. Happiness is an inside job. It's not what people see on the outside, like you just said. It comes from the inside, and it will come out. And are we entitled to be happy 24/7? Nobody
Right.
said you're going to be happy 24/7.
Right.
It's also being able to sit and not be happy, but just to be.
Right.
Just to be.
Right.
This moment too shall pass.
Right. But finding that happy place.
Yes.
For, you know, for whatever length of time during the day that you can find it, gives your soul the strength to deal with those moments when you're maybe not so happy.
Exactly right.
So,
Perfectly
but
said.
if you can't find that happy place, then all of a sudden,
I'm
you know,
looking.
life
That void
becomes
happens.
work.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
And once the void is there, people look to fill that void with whatever.
So now you mentioned you're a lacrosse coach.
Yes.
Do you still coach?
I
lacrosse?
don't. I
You
don't.
So that was, for a long period of my life, that was my happiness, was coaching.
I
And I
love
coached
coaching.
soccer. And I was blessed to be able to coach both my kids in soccer as they were growing up and some basketball as well. And
I
to
coached my
see
daughter.
my kids and the other, you know, kids that were on my teams throughout. It's just, that made me happy.
So happy, you know, and having a bunch of girls can be very challenging, you know.
Yep.
But teaching them, and I'll never forget one time we it was a game right at Easter break. So, you know, we were short girls because people are away and what have you. And one of my star players missed a couple of practices. And we had only one sub. And I didn't put her in the, and all the girls were like, she's not starting. And I said to her, I said, why are you not starting? And she said, because I missed practices this week, coach, and they deserve to take the field. And I couldn't have been more prouder of the answer. And to watch all the other players go, wow, I just need to show up in life sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, coaching is not about winning all the time, right? It's also about having grace in loss. And we had one other game that I'll never forget. They weren't listening to a word I said. And I said, why are you fighting this? They came off the field at halftime, and I said, it's your game to win and it's your game to lose. Lose. And it's okay if we lose today. I'm not going to, I'm not owning it. And I went and laid on the bench in the sun, and my daughter is like, oh, crap.
Right.
Like, you know,
Right.
They came back and they won that game, but it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with their own self-respect. And they figured out that they are a team, and it was theirs to win and it was theirs to lose. But those are the life lessons that need to come
Right.
in instilling things. You know, Andrew, so I want to go back to Brentwood a little bit. My son was a wrestler, so we were in that whole wrestling community. And the wrestling coaches at Brentwood would find kids that really had a natural ability or not a natural ability, but they brought them in and they kept them safe. And they taught them, you know, come over to the house, we'll feed you and we'll work on other things, because they were committed not to winning or losing. They were committed to the kid. And they saw the challenges that these kids have.
Right.
You know, and when my son, Andrew, found his brother, he called me, he called his wrestling coach, then he called the police. His coach never left his side. And we need to empower them too, with more tools in their toolbox, because they affect more change in children than they even realize.
Right.
They really, really do. And it was reported, you know, COS, Communities of Solution, did a survey quite a few years ago of 400 kids. And they all said whether they played sports or not, they would go to a coach, because they had someone that was willing to listen.
Right.
They had a different ear from a coach than they did from other people in their lives.
Right.
So that's an incredible thing that we still have to internalize and I think bring forward. You know, we have to do that.
Yeah. It's you see it happening, and for every school it's a different person or people.
Yes.
Or
but everybody gets that one person in their
everyone
lives.
finds that one person.
That one person.
You have to find that one person.
There's going to be one person
Right.
that you, if you look back on your life, said, wow, they had a profound change on my life.
Now my wheels are spinning in my head. Who would that have been for me? I have to think about that for a moment. But yeah, you know, I think the more we encourage students to reach out, to find somebody that they can talk to, and the more available people are, the teachers and whatnot, coaches, the more available they are to listen.
So when we have a community or a school district, right, and everyone is given some kind of training on what to look for kids, and sometimes when kids get to school, whether it's the lunch lady or the bus monitor or whoever, that may be the first hello that they've gotten all day. So how empowering is it to start the day with whoever you run into, and it shouldn't be the teachers that they always see. Teachers should shake it up and identify early on in school, because they know who kids are in their classrooms. And those names should be brought forward and shuffled among the whole faculty in a school. Because right now, if you're on a lunch line and you say, hey, how you doing today? that someone's watching, that someone cares. What's, is it going to always work? No.
Right.
Is it going to work more than 50% of the time? I will venture to say yes.
Yeah. And there's a great program, I'm sure you're familiar with it, called Mental Health First Aid.
Yes, I took it.
I took the class, and actually somebody who I graduated high school with was a teacher, and we held a class. We had 25, 30 folks in the class, and it was like 2 nights, 3 hours or so a night or something like that. But it was a wonderful education on how to recognize the signs of
Someone's struggling.
somebody struggling. That's
Right.
a great way to put it. Somebody struggling.
Somebody's struggling, and what
then
to
what to
do.
do. Because we know if you're in a school setting or if you're a coach on a field, if somebody hurts themselves physically, you can see that.
Yes.
Most people can see that. Most people know what the response is, depending on the severity of the injury. But when it comes to mental health issues, those sorts of emotional struggles, most people don't know how to.
And most people are afraid of it, Tom.
Yeah,
Let's
well,
be
they're right. They're afraid of it because they don't know. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know.
So, in
what it is.
suicidal instances, you do ask, do you have a plan? Now, if you weren't trained in that method or really trained to say,
Right.
ask the question,
Right.
because if they give you the answer, you can be the one that changes the direction of their life. You can be the life jacket for them. And that's so important. And listen, in community, in schools, in everything, when a kid has changed.
Right.
You do. There's subtleties. Why, if an 85 average student went to a 70, there has to be a conversation about this. Don't withhold that.
Right.
As uncomfortable as that meeting may be, let's not withhold that anymore.
Yeah.
Well, they're still passing. Well, yeah, I think we can't do that anymore.
Right. Right.
It's time to ask the questions. They may not be getting help at home.
Right.
So, right?
Yeah.
Be part of the
Oftentimes
solution.
they're coming home, they're going into their room, closing the door.
And parents think that's part of, and a portion is part of being a teenager, but a big portion is not being part of a teenager.
Right.
I can't thank you enough, and we have so much more to talk about. So thank you for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great weekend, and look for some big announcements in Tom Silmy's district.
Great to be with you, Linda. Great to be with you.
It's gonna happen.
Always. Looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen. Big things. And we won't share it now, because usually we start to talk while the camera's still running, and we get into trouble.
All right, later.
Later.
I can't wait.